Welcome back to Build Up, and I'm with Sarah Jones, who founded MoneyPad Accountants back in 2012. Sarah was doing cloud accounting before most of the profession knew what the cloud was. About half of what her firm does now is not-for-profit and social justice work, and her team doesn't email anybody after 7 o'clock at night. There's a lot in that. Sarah, welcome.
Hello, hi.
Let's start
Feels
before
like a lot when
MoneyPad
you just say it
existed.
like that.
Yeah. It's kind of everything in a nutshell, right?
Yeah. To just sum up the last, I don't know, 12 years, just like that.
I mean, you were running an outsourcing team, right? And Xero had just landed in the UK. I know a lot of accountants are
Yeah.
big fans of Xero. And they had one person in the country. What did you see in it that other people didn't back then?
Yeah. So, and when it was released, I was actually reading a blog of someone who was testing it in the UK even before then, and it sounded interesting. But I think at the time I was stuck on desktop software, running a sort of an outsourcing team, and I was just really struggling to really kind of give back information to the client to actually make it more useful than we've just got to do your VAT return or just got, like in the sense of compliance. And so I'd started moving everyone onto software, but it was still a desktop software, which meant I'd then print out reports and show them that. And when you just felt there had to be a better way of doing it. And then when Xero came out, I just and obviously it was fully cloud based, and I thought, oh, that's really interesting. And when it was ready, when I felt it was kind of ready to start using it, had bank feeds, and bank feeds at the time, it felt completely revolutionary. The fact that the bank data would feed in. I mean, I only did it for like one or two banks at the time, but it's still the concept that the bank data would feed in, and then you just kind of tell it where to go. And the fact that the client could log on and see what we were doing, and suddenly full
Yeah.
transparency. And it just, for me, it meant that we could just change the conversation completely with the clients, and kind of make this be an exercise that was suddenly useful to them rather than something they just had to do.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all about, isn't it, making the clients as easy as possible, right? And Xero seems to be that for accountants and
Yeah.
for yourself, making your life easier.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, even now, we've got a lot of people who, really like to do their own invoicing, let's say. So, but the difference is, rather than them do it somewhere else and then send us
Mhm.
all of the attachments, now they can just do it directly in Xero. So there's a real win about sharing, and everyone in that one source of truth, about the
Mm.
finances. It works really well. And I find the other really good thing with Xero that I always liked is the fact that it had access to so many other apps, so you could really scale with it. And just because
Mm.
Xero itself might not be able to cope with the volume, you could get plugins that could. So it felt really flexible, which was really suitable for especially startups, when you're not quite sure where you're heading, right, and what you're going to need, initially. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Tell me about the builders and the receipts, because this is the bit I love, right? I mean, you were
Yeah.
handing people on a phone and saying, right, go and start snapping everything.
Yeah, and it's so I came across Receipt Bank back in the day, which is now Dext, early on. And I remember my account manager at the time walking in and saying to me, right, Sarah, this is what you've got to do. You've got to get a client in front of you, download the app on their phone in front of you, and get them to start snapping the receipts. So we're not suddenly dealing with all those receipts in someone's van and saying pop them in an envelope and give them to us. And at the time, I have to admit, I wasn't sure whether it was going to work. I loved the idea of it. I was like, is someone really going to take photos? But then when I started doing that, and the minute someone came in, I said, right, hold on, let's get your phone out, let's download the app. And then it's like, wow, this is amazing. And suddenly that changed it even more. So we're suddenly getting the bank feed data going directly into Xero, so we don't need to ask for the bank statements as regularly. And then, hold on, the client's taking photos as they spend money. And then we started auto forwarding supplier bills in, and suddenly you're like, oh wow, this is completely changing. And it meant that we could suddenly know what someone had done a few days ago, rather than, I won't say yesterday, because I think that took some time to evolve to that point. But originally it was sort of like, oh, well, we know how you did a few days ago, rather than sort of 3 month blocks or 1 month blocks. And
Yeah.
it changed changed it from being a reactive kind of service to suddenly it could be something that we could actually be more proactive with the client and actually sort of monitor things for them and actually have better conversations ultimately, like
Okay,
up to
yeah.
current conversations rather than historic, kind of like, let's talk about what you did do, let's talk about what you're doing right now, you know.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, it probably wasn't, it was a hard sell to the clients themselves at that point.
Xero in particular was, it really was. It was such a hard sell at the start that we ended up paying the software. We absorbed it ourselves within our
Ah,
pricing initially, because
yeah,
I just could not get anyone really that was willing to pay in the early days. That changed quite
yeah,
quickly. I'd say after a year or two
yeah,
that started changing. But initially, yeah, we literally had to kind of absorb it within our margins. But for us, we were like, well, the efficiency we're going to gain from it, we'll take that hit. But it went from trying to convince everyone that this was a good idea to now, like, I mean,
it's a
you know, if you're not kind of on a software and that's, you know, in that way, it would be unusual now, I think. So yeah, it's really changed. And even the receipt bank app, like there's no novelty in that anymore. You know, being able to take
yeah,
photos on your phone, you know, that's changed now. And then you can get hooks with, you know, WhatsApp channels, you're linking and stuff, you know, the whole thing is different now. But back then it felt quite revolutionary, you know.
yeah, no, definitely. I suppose it kind of changed, for those clients once you could tell them what they did last month rather than 18 months ago, right?
Yeah. There's so many things you
Um,
can do with that, right? If I know how you've done last month, then hold on, I could tell you how much maybe you need to put away for the tax man as well. And then if I can tell
mhm,
you how much tax you need to save, then you actually know how much money you can spend or how much money you've got
right.
available. You know, you have an idea of what your margins are, you know, how the business is performing. So it really, I really believe that there's a power in knowing your numbers, and you know, us being able to being able to give that to a client then means that they can take that knowledge, you know, with where they're trying to go. So it just really,
Yeah.
really helps that relationship, and really helps us kind of just make that difference to them in whatever journey they're going on, you know.
Yeah, definitely. So take me back further. I mean, you're early in your career, you were on a software help desk, right? And clients are kind of like handing over like box of papers, getting back some full of jargon. What was it going through your head, like watching that?
Oh well, okay. I mean, for my first one, I was as a QuickBooks help desk. So I've gone around all of the softwares, right? And I remember, and I worked for Margaret, who was a fantastic little practice. But at that point, yeah, I think, to be honest, at that point, I just fell in love with the whole concept of numbers and spreadsheets and payroll, and that was, you know, so my first start has always been outsourcing, you know, the outsourcing aspect of it, and then I kind of fell into compliance later on. But just I love the fact that I got to see people regularly, but at the same time, there's only so much joy you can take in going through paper receipts. I remember I once had to do a job for someone which was 3 years worth of books, and it really
Wow.
was boxes and boxes that you had to bring together. I mean, if you had a job like that now, you know, it'd just be a whole different thing. So it was good, but it just took too long, right? It would take too long to be able to generate all of that together to be meaningful. And I always felt that, yeah, yeah, I don't know. Back then, when you're telling someone what they have done, you're telling them what their tax is.
Mm,
It just doesn't. It's quite often it's not good news, you know, and you don't really
hmm.
feel a little bit powerless. You can't really do anything about it because it's already happened. Um,
Yeah.
so it's kind of, I feel like the technology now has really changed that, and then it almost gives us a bit more control, you know, of
Mm,
trying to make the numbers go where we want them to go, which is really good. But back then, yeah, yeah, I've always loved it. But yeah, you look back now, you sort of think, gosh, if this software was there back then, it would just been a whole different role. But I've always loved people and owner managed business people, and you know, and the conversations and just hearing everyone's ideas and what they do, and everyone's different from each other, and hearing what's working for them, what's not, and it's
yeah.
yeah, yeah, it's fun.
The journey's exciting, right? I mean, it's kind
Yeah,
of like you kind of appreciate what you've got now than what you had back then. Obviously, it's like, it's obviously in every industry, right? You wish you had this and that and this and that, but you've kind of gone. Everyone in different industries, right, have gone through a technology change,
yeah,
and it's changing every industry, including accountancy.
yeah.
And I mean, you obviously talk about finding, the number that actually like matters to a business, right? How do you go about finding that? Like, have you got like certain things that
Yeah.
you do?
And I think this is something we've really been focusing on in the later years, really. Is and it takes, yeah, I mean, it can take time. It depends really. If we've got clients in the same kind of industry, we've probably got quite a good idea of what those numbers are likely to be, um reasonably close. So, and we obviously start there, but the big thing I find is you kind of, you work out what you think is the is
Mm,
are, two or three numbers that might be important to them, and then you sit down with them, you show them something, and then you
mm,
sit and wait, and you just see how they read it, and that is the most interesting part of the conversation. Do they ask any questions? Are they Does it make any sense to them? And at that
mm.
point, that's when the journey really starts then, because what you'll end up with 3 6 months later will be completely different to what you start with. But by then
Yeah,
sort of sounding off ideas with the, person running the business, you end up getting to that source, because then you start experimenting, you start playing around with it. So
yeah,
the number is different, I would say, for different industries and different types of businesses, but there are some businesses where the number can be very similar. And there's others where it's completely unique and you'll never have anyone else where you're tracking the same number. But that's part
yeah,
of the fun, is just trying
yeah.
to find that. And once you find it, and if you've got two or three things that you need to track, weekly, monitor, at that point, you're driving the numbers at that point as
Mm.
well, and you're kind of in control a bit more.
I'm sure you've got plenty of good examples, right? Like some
Yeah.
exciting kind of like, no names, but like, is there
Yes, no
anything kind of
names.
like sticks out in if you can sticks out in your mind that you thought,
Oh,
how
yeah.
that's someone in their
I'll try and
business.
say this discreetly, but yeah, so we've got a project at the moment and we're really starting to get there with what that number is. And I'd say probably been working on it for about 6 months. So it's been quite a big project. But as of literally this week, we've just displayed the next kind of version of it. And it is a weekly tracker of a certain income source, which will lead this
Mm,
not-for-profit entity to becoming hopefully more self-sufficient. And they're
mm,
doing lots of things in the background to try and increase this number. And so what we're doing is we're tracking not the whole number, but one particular aspect of the number that is the most impactful to the bottom line. And so whilst they're doing, it's kind of, it's almost like a subscription based, and based on what you deliver to those members, they may pay more essentially. So
mm.
we then are monitoring what they're delivering versus
Right.
the activity of the subscriptions. And initially, what we were giving really was meaningless to everyone. To us, we felt it was important, but it wasn't making sense. Whereas now, what we've managed to kind of work with them on, we've now got a figure that is like, hold on, this is making sense. And what we did last week, oh, we can see it, right? That's worked there. That right. So let's do that again. And again, now we're in a
Right.
place where we can really control it. And so that, what I really hope is that will lead to that entity being able to be far more self-sufficient and less reliant on grant funding, which is, really empowering for a not-for-profit organisation.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you talk about not for profit, right? I mean, about half of MoneyPad now is about not for profit,
Yeah,
right? And social
yeah.
justice work. And, do you think that would have been when you first started out? Would that have been your career?
No, I had no idea it was going in that way. I really didn't. And I think in my training days, I'd worked with some charities, and I really enjoyed that. But yeah, I kind of fell into it a few years into MoneyPad, where we got introduced to our first not-for-profit, which was a not-for-profit in the social justice area, and they were about providing better kind of financial knowledge, really.
Mm,
And it was great. I was suddenly wrapped up in this world where the numbers that were needed were different, completely different. And they weren't a charity as well, which was interesting in its own right. Someone that's charitable
yeah,
by nature, but not a charity.
not
So therefore
yeah,
doesn't get the same tax exemptions. And yeah, I completely fell in love with it straight away, and the complexities of it. And we never looked back after that. We just really just took on more and more. Everyone knows everyone in that world as well, and it's a lovely world of people really trying to drive change. And
yeah,
it's our kind of, I think for MoneyPad, it's our way of just making a difference in the world through
Mhm.
giving the right numbers to these organizations so that we can kind of really help them and their impact. So it's a very rewarding area. So it's definitely an area we've been growing. And now, yeah, now we're about half and half. And I'd never have told you would have done that in the first place. But yeah, I wouldn't change it.
No, I know, I know. It's sometimes, in life you just kind of fall into things,
You
right? And
do.
and just that's just part of life. It doesn't matter what you're gonna do. Just kind of, that's a lot of people's journey, right? You kind of fall into things, and
Gotta, yeah,
it's so funny the way that happens.
got to be open for change, right? And you've also got to like look at what's in front of you sometimes. And I always think it's really good to have a plan, but it's also really good to just pay attention in case there's an opportunity that might land slightly differently. But you're like, but hey, that still ultimately fits with who I am and what I want to do. Let's just go and have a little look. So you just don't know where things can land, and I think that's part of the fun. So you have to have a plan. It's important to have a plan, but I think it's important to be open to listening to
Yeah,
what the business is telling you and the opportunities are telling you, and what your customers are telling you as well. What are they telling? What are they liking? What are they? What's not working for them, or what are they not asking for that you really think they should be?
yeah,
And you just keep pivoting and changing to that. Yeah,
yeah. No, no, I agree. I think, as the A team says, it's great when a plan comes together, but sometimes you've got to be open to change. But yeah, no, you mentioned you wanted to build something educational for that sector, right? I know you said about kind of like giving back and
yeah.
being like genuinely generous, like with the knowledge. Where's that going?
Oh well, yeah. I mean, I think there's a few phases in this. I think our yeah, we're very much we do a lot of finance function work for the not for profits now, and that works really well. But I think there's a deeper desire to really be quite open with our knowledge that we've gained, and to really look at training and supporting other finance professionals to really be able to support. We can only help so many organisations. We're one firm, and I think there's just a real desire, like for us, to not have an entity fail because they didn't know the numbers essentially. And so I think some of the startup organisations, if they knew a bit more, if they had some templates, if they had a bit of training, then it would really help them navigate those really difficult first few years. And then, year 3 to 5, that can often be quite difficult scaling. And then you need to bring a finance professional in. But a lot of startup entities, they just don't have the funding for finance support,
Yeah,
but they actually really need it. And there's so many organizations out there doing so much good that I really want to try and find a way that we can just share some of that knowledge to help people just be able to be able to continue and really achieve the purpose that they're there for. And in my way, that's kind of, again, that's how we can be as impactful as we can in this world.
yeah, definitely. I mean, it's obviously something you're passionate about, and it's nice speaking about stuff when you're
Yeah,
passionate about stuff like that, isn't it? Right. So, it's always kind of good to give back, and I'm sure even if you don't mean it, I'm sure you'll probably get a lot of stuff kind of back from that, right? I think it's kind of like, the educational side of it and giving back. It's just, it kind of comes back as well tenfold, I think. I think it definitely helps.
yeah, and I think it's just, I don't know, we work so many hours, right? And that's precious time of our lives
Right.
away from our family, away from our friends. And for me, I want to make it count. If I'm going to give that time, like for me, it's not about the money. It's about feeling that what I did was worthwhile, like for me.
Right.
And in that way, I think it works. And it's a wonderful, I think it's amazing, especially when you come across some of these organisations that are volunteer led, and these people just giving up their own time
Yeah.
to a
Time.
cause.
It's
And
amazing.
you just anything you can do to try and support them. It's that sense of community, right? It
Yeah.
just feels
Absolutely.
good. Yeah,
Yeah. Tell me about our heroes and its hour.
yeah.
How does it work?
So I think this is our first step towards our long-term goal of trying to be more of a training educational place for not-for-profits. So this is our first point, which is where we're basically banking for every referral. Try and say it right. Referral we get. We bank 1 hour of time. And then initially we were giving that 1 hour back out as financial advice, but we've changed that now. And what we now do is we build it up to half a day, and then we donate that half a day to an organization in need of financial support, maybe because they haven't got the funding, or they're in crisis mode and they don't even know if they can afford it. And that's our way at the moment of giving back. And then we'll sit down. Depending on the organisation, depends what they need. So that might be sitting with the board and just letting them offload all their concerns and then just trying to give them some advice. It could also be sitting there and actually trying to dissect a financial problem or doing some tax planning. It really varies at the moment. But once we've done that, what we also then do is just drop a little thank you note back to the person that it would be 3 people that had been part of that referral, just to thank them and just let them know that we've kind of paid forward the referral they've given us and how it's helped.
It's a great way of doing it. I mean, obviously, when you do referrals, you always expect, the kind of way everyone does it, right, is a referral, you get something for the referral, whatever it may be, where this is paying it forward, and I kind of like, it's not for me, it's for that person type of thing. I love it's the obviously unusual kind of way around, I think it's a great way to do it.
Yeah, because I did look at initially, I was like, well, should we give a gift? Should we, a thank you doesn't seem enough if someone's, gone to that effort. But then I thought, well, that's just really the value of that just doesn't, this just felt like a much bigger way of saying thank you, but also, again, being impactful as an organization. It just seemed to really fit well. So yeah.
What kind of organisations are you hoping that the bank for? Or where do they end up with? Do you think?
So yeah, we've had a few that have just naturally come through where they've wanted help, but they've not been able to afford help. And we also have people you can nominate. So you can nominate organisations and individuals as well. So quite often some of the referrals will actually say, well, actually, I've got someone that really needs some help. And that doesn't necessarily need to be an organisation. It could be a person in need. And they will refer. And we have a little list of names of people that we know need some support. And then we kind of get to them as quickly as we can on the list. I think we are putting the list is, we're nearly there. We're nearly through the list now. So I think we are going to put a campaign out to try and see if anyone else needs any support. But generally, it's just through that kind of community of just, does anyone have anyone that needs some help? Think they've got an entity that would really benefit from sort of half a day of support. And the other thing to mention is the support is usually like finance director support. So we've gone for our most expensive kind of half a day charge out again to try and be as generous as we can with what we're giving back.
No, that's fantastic. I know we spoke. I know you do a lot of construction and CIS work, right?
Yes,
which is like
we do.
A bit of a corner of the profession. Plenty that of accountants kind of quietly avoid. I will say, to say the nicest, probably.
I don't blame them.
I mean, you've gone the other way.
Yeah.
Why?
Because I love complicated things. That's probably was obvious. The not-for-profit side of things is really complicated, and construction is as well. But I also think it's also an area that's just really, where the individuals really need support. It can be a really difficult temperamental area where, you can go from taking on one site at a time and everything can be steady, and you suddenly take 2 sites on, and then there can be a cash dip, or everything can get material very quickly, and it can get very difficult. So I think it's an area that needs a lot of finance support within it. So again, it's an area that we can be really impactful and really support the individuals in it. It's also really complicated and prone to error. So it's a way that we can really help. So we do like construction, we do like CIS, the CIS side of things, but it is unusual. A lot of firms sort of, because it can be so temperamental, especially with HMRC, they don't make things easy sometimes.
No, I know.
But it's where you can really have really good conversations again with individuals on it, and they're busy on what they're doing. There's absolutely no way. I'm completely non-practical. I'm really terrible at any kind of DIY, so I find it amazing for those that can, but let me do the numbers. I can sort the numbers out for you. I can't do what you do. And it's like putting the right person in the right skill set, and just supporting each other through that.
Yeah, no. I mean, I'm sure you've got a few nice stories. I remember we had a quick chat about the one that drops you on a WhatsApp voice note from the site.
Uh, oh, which one was that? Well, I get a lot of voice notes. I get a lot of WhatsApp voice notes
What
from.
does a good account? What does a good accountant actually do for somebody who's juggling like three jobs at
Yeah,
once?
well, I think the biggest thing I would say, like my biggest thing for people in construction, particularly, I think, is that especially when you're doing more than one project, right, more than one site, is how often do you go back and look at that project once it's finished, pause and reflect. How did it go? Did we make the money we thought we were going to make on it? What
Mm,
are our margins like? And if we didn't, why? And that's the biggest thing, is learning why, right? Is it because it can be simple things like if there's a delay on materials and then everyone's standing
mm,
around for 1 or 2 days, which adds wastage, which can suddenly change the cost base. And it's all about learning from previous projects and taking that knowledge in how you price it in particular as well going forwards. And that's one of the biggest things in construction, I think, that's really important, is to actually keep looking back at your last job and look at what you got right, but more importantly, what you didn't quite get right, and see how you can tweak your approach to get it right next time. And that's not necessarily about how you handle the job. It's more in the pricing at the beginning to make sure that your margins don't suffer through
yeah.
things that happen. And that's one of the biggest things I think in construction that people don't do enough, is just looking at it job by job, right, project by project. And also it's the cash timing, the tranches, when you're doing multiple sites, because quite often it's not, you don't get all the money at the end or all the money at the beginning. It's fed through, and it's all about matching that cash to the spend and making sure
Mm,
you're asking for enough in those tranches, so that you don't
yeah.
sort of suffer a cash dip. So those are the key
Yeah. It's so
things, I would say.
important, isn't it?
Yeah,
The construction industry like that is so important. I mean, obviously they take sites on based on a GDV at the very start, and then
yeah,
they work backwards, like everyone, I suppose. You work backwards to take a site on. Okay, so what are the houses going for, etc., etc. So the numbers mean so much, and like you said, a delay 2, 3, 4 days is
yeah,
is a lot of money, right? And a lot of delay, and then everything moves back,
yeah.
money, profit goes down. So it's so important to know those numbers,
It
especially life
is.
so fast, right? They're already thinking of the next site. Money's getting recycled. So
Yeah.
it's
And
a
the
web.
market can change, right? The world can change in an instant sometimes. And so I think there's a real thing about trying to get jobs in and completed as well. You don't want that time to lag. I mean, obviously it's always a bit longer in construction, right? But still, you don't want those delays that start creeping up to 2 years or three, because at that point there's other factors that you can't predict that can fall into it. So yeah, it's a hard job, I have to admit. And I think it's amazing, those that manage to do it really well. But I think if you've got someone just in the background, just checking in with you regularly, talking about your numbers, letting you know how you're doing, and like you said, and they quite often send voice notes, just sounding off ideas for this, or just to let you know this has gone
Mm,
really wrong, this is going to affect my margin. I'm just mentioning this now so that we can
yeah,
pause and reflect on it later.
preemptive.
And
Yeah.
it's just thinking about that. And I think when you've got someone talking to you about that, then you as a business owner, you start thinking about it whilst you're on the job as well.
Mm,
You suddenly
yeah.
start thinking differently, and that's
Mm,
that's really good then, because when you start looking out for those things, that's when you can start improving things and improving margins.
yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. I mean, your firm, right? I know you mentioned it doesn't email anyone before 7 in the morning or after 7 at night. Where did that come from?
Yeah. Uh, so I think initially it came from the fact that we were all working flexibly. I'm a big believer in working at the best time that suits you. Like I'm much better in the morning. I'm really not good in the evening. But everyone's different with how they excel, and in the time of day. But what that led to was some of my team working really different hours, and maybe slightly unsociable hours at times.
Yeah.
And I thought, gosh, I really don't want to be in a position where we're emailing people late in the night or really in the morning. It just didn't feel right.
Mm,
And then I started talking to the team about it, and then there was this thing about, when does a client know they're not going to get a reply from you on the day? Setting those expectations, those boundaries as well. When do they know when they can call, or maybe you might have logged off for the day? And I thought there's a real
yeah.
nice way of framing that, sort of saying, look, 7 till 7, That's our zone. Outside of that, we're not going to email you. So if we have emailed, we forward timed it to the next day. And likewise, if you call us, you're probably not going to get a reply at that, outside of those hours. And I think there's something really good about setting those boundaries for yourself and for the team, but also for clients, because you don't want to send someone something to do with tax or compliance at kind of 8-9 o'clock in the evening. It doesn't help when if that person's got to going to get to bed after that, and they've just suddenly seen something and they don't feel they can call you and ask you about it there and then in that moment. So I just felt all around it just felt like a better way of doing things.
Yeah. Well, obviously, it's good to set boundaries, right? Everyone knows,
Yeah.
what your accountant is, when you can speak to them, and
Yeah.
I mean, everyone sometimes comes up with ideas and questions around certain times, but I suppose they can just get answered the next day. But I,
Yeah.
yeah, no, it's a nice it's a nice thing
Yeah.
to do, and have that relationship with your clients, and I'm sure they respect
Yeah.
you for it.
And I get that now. I get sort of WhatsApp voice notes, and I don't look at them till the next day. And then when I listen to them, it's quite often, hey, I know you're not going to hear about this till the morning, but this time works for me. So, and if you listen to it now, stop, listen to it tomorrow, because it's, we're outside of the hours. But, that, I think that's really, I think that works really well then. Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. Last one, I know you've spent a couple of years kind of deliberately not growing, building foundations, working out kind
Yeah.
of like who you are and stuff. You said you're ready now, right? Like, what does the right kind of growth look like for MoneyPad?
Yeah. So, yeah, and I think we spent quite a lot of time just trying to make sure the foundations are solid for us, really. And now, yeah, what does growth look like? Growth doesn't, yeah, it's a funny one, that, isn't it? Because what you can think it can just mean of lots and lots of clients and, like,
Local
numbers
stats,
just
yeah,
growing.
yeah.
It's not necessarily what growth is. For me, the purpose of what we're doing is about the impact we make. And so for me, growth is about either helping our existing clients more, or helping you know helping new clients. But that doesn't mean necessarily growing really quickly in a large way. I think that's quite hard to control, and for us it is all about the relationships with the individuals, and I never want to grow to a point where we might lose that, ever. So if I felt there was a point where that personal touch was not achievable, then that
Mm,
kind of contradicts our values and what we're here for. So I think growth
yeah.
growth sometimes is about how can we grow with our clients and deliver them more? How can we improve the numbers we're giving them? How can we, increase that sort of delivery as well? That's growth in its own way as well. Growth as an organization ourselves, in the sense of how we deliver better, how we serve our clients better. I think that is a really important way of looking at it in the sense of growth as well. And so that might mean
Yeah.
more clients, but it's not necessarily the primary goal here, I would say.
Mm. It could be also just, like you said, get, providing a better service to clients, right? Like
Yeah.
and giving more, or, doing more for existing clients, and, building their
Yeah.
businesses better, right? I suppose I spoke to an accountant the other day, and he said to me, I want our clients to pay more taxes, right? Like, yeah, but it's obviously a bit of a mad one. But obviously, the
Yeah.
business is growing at the same time, right? It's kind of, you want the business to grow, you want the
Yeah.
numbers to be right. So it's, that part of growing is, a super important thing, especially for accountants.
Yeah, and I think we're all always learning, right? And that never stops. I don't believe that's ever going to stop. So I think that there is part of that growth is about, it's just the what you change, it just keeps changing, right? And you keep learning new things, and like, oh well, that's working really well, but oh, maybe we can start doing that. We can start doing that in this constant, ever changing world that we're in now, especially with the sort of the digital advancements we're in. I can really see what our service is, changing, even internally, and how we deliver it. So I think there's lots of opportunities for us to be able to focus even more on better
Mm,
conversations, as a result of where the technology is going, and that in itself is growth as well. So yeah, I think growth can be different to just increasing the numbers, but at the
yeah,
same time it can be, but that doesn't necessarily mean more clients. That can, like you said, that can be just about delivering more to your
go through
existing
that.
clients too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I mean, if someone's, if someone's looking for an accountant, and they can genuinely talk to, what should they be
Mm,
looking for, from the outset? What would you look
yeah.
for, would you say?
Yeah, I think, okay, so I think before you got into the technical side of things, I think the first thing is it someone that you feel you could be completely honest with and actually talk
Yeah.
to about everything? If I don't know what someone really wants out of their life, and their company. I can't, I can't help them fully. It's got to be someone that you feel is on your wavelength, that you can really be really open with, and talk about
Mm,
everything with. And if you feel that you're getting that vibe at that point, that's really good. And then after that, it's about, you know how much do they understand your business, like from your conversations? Do they kind of,
yeah.
do they get that? Does that work? I think there's more obvious things which I think someone would check, about sort of how often is the service delivery, are they proactive, and that side of things. But for me, this is like when we take on a client, the intention is to be with them for the rest of their journey, right? And that's not
Mm,
necessarily just that company. That company might go and then they'll start something else. So it's about that journey with that individual. And so I think when you're looking for an accountant, I think you should go in with that mindset of that friend that you're going to kind of go into business with, that you feel that you can
yeah.
really use and offload to and support. Because I think as accountants, we're in this really unusual space where you can actually be much more honest with that individual, especially about your
Yeah.
day-to-day problems within your business, and it can be a really nice sounding board. But if you don't feel comfortable with that person, then you're going to lose that opportunity. And I think accountants, just by nature, we just see so many businesses and so many situations that we see so many stories and so many wins and so many losses of different scenarios, that it just gives us that wealth of kind of knowledge that we can share, and like,
Yeah.
with those individuals. So I think that's the biggest thing for me. If I was well, saying that, I have an accountant. I don't do my own books. I have an accountant, and he's amazing, and I literally can tell him anything, and I do. Regularly, and he is my anchor, and he's my support, and that's really important to me. And so, you know that's what I would recommend someone else look to.
Yeah, definitely. That's been brilliant. I mean, this has been brilliant, Sarah. Where can people find you, and where can they find out about our heroes?
Yeah, so we're on Instagram, but I think it might be easier just to go straight to the website, money-pad.co.uk. It's probably the easiest place to start. And then we've got MoneyPad Not for Profit, which is, there's a hook on that website from that. But we are on Instagram as well, MoneyPad Accountants, and there's a MoneyPad Not for Profit page on Instagram as well, so you can follow there. The Not for Profit one, we've got lots of free advice and tips and ideas for not for profits, and on the MoneyPad Accountant side, we're putting the Our Heroes part up there as well. But people can always reach out if they've got an organisation they think that would really benefit from Our Heroes. Then please just reach out to us in any of those channels, and we'll pop them on the list. And then when we've got enough referrals, we'll go out and reach out and support them.
Fantastic, brilliant. Well, thanks very
Cool.
much for joining us.
Thank you.
I hope there's been a lot of good snippets there for everyone, and some good advice as well for anyone who's maybe not got the best accountant at this present moment. So I think you've got some good insights to
Yeah.
businesses. So, thanks very much for that, Sarah. I really appreciate it. I hope everyone's enjoyed
Cool.
it, and yeah, we'll see you again soon on Build Up.
Yeah. Thanks, Freddie. Cheers.
Thank you. Thanks.